Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dos Amigos.
Yes.
An iHeart and my Cultura destination for voice and ideas.
That's right.
Freddie, how are you?
I'm good, Wilmer. How are you?
Good. This is Freddie Rodriguez,
This is Wilmer
one of
Valderrama.
my best friends.
One of my best friends indeed.
And partner in crime here on this Dos Amigos adventure. We're a lot of episodes in, and we want to acknowledge every single one of you who have been watching the show and also listening to our show. We love you guys. Tell a friend that we're here for them as well. And what are we drinking today?
Let's see, a little cafecito. What's the name of this place? You said you wanted to give
It's
them
called
some love.
Laundries. Laundries is a local business. We're going to support a local business.
Give them props.
You know, our friends over there have completely elevated the coffee cafe game here on here in the valley. So big shout out to them. They roast their own beans and everything.
They roast their own beans.
Yes, really good. Very strong bean, I may add.
Right.
You know?
No, I remember when we first started this, I remember you talking them up down the block.
They're great. They're great. So big shout out to Audrey and everybody, you guys. And they keep spreading. They have like a few more opening up. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I've been so grateful. You know, to our conversations.
Indeed.
You know, we had a great reminiscence. And when they asked us, like, why did you want to do a podcast? You know, it was a quick reminder that, like, you know, for me, that, you know, how much kind of we needed this. Come on, we needed to just talk it out and bring us all together and bring all of our peoples together in a community to kind of just chat and be, and at a time where it's important to kind of say who we are out loud. I think this is, you know, this is kind of was one of the small missions, but behind all of us, there's an amazing team, right? And I want to acknowledge our team here at Dos Amigos.
Yes.
You know? We have an incredible team out here. Leo Clem said to not say anyone's name except for his. And I thought it was disrespectful because it's like so many more people that make this possible.
Yeah. That's a lie. Leo.
So we want to introduce our third amigo. You know, you guys know him by now. Guess who has returned to the desk of the bar?
Yeah, he's back, baby.
Aaron.
Not
Not to be confused with Aaron Sanchez.
Yeah.
Imagine that's your last name.
Burleson, right? Is that how?
Yeah, Burleson, yes.
Burleson.
Yes, Aaron Burleson back again. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, man?
Good. What's been new with you?
Really blessed. Really blessed.
Indeed.
That's a great update. Thank
Really
you.
blessed.
Yes.
Moving on.
And,
You can elaborate.
Well, just, you know, excited to get into this conversation about teams. And, you know, I was watching the Oscars on Sunday. You know, everyone gets up there, they accept an award. They like to thank their teams. You know, big shout out to my team. Big, you know, this person, that person. So just wanted to get the conversation started with asking you both, like, what's the importance of building a solid team and having that support behind you? Because we all know we can't do it by ourselves. And so wanted to ask you about the importance of a team and then what roles and factors go in building the best team.
Right.
It's a great question. I mean, Freddie, would you say that it starts out as this kind of solo mission to try to prove to as many people as you can that you can, in fact, do this?
Right.
And you have to make believers out of individuals that are going to help you just continue to carve away at the possibility. You know, because it seems like you're kind of like solo and just telling everyone, "Hey, put me in the game," you know.
Right.
But then, you know, at some point you need to have the support of an infrastructure that's going to support your possible outcome. No.
You do. I've had, you know, it's funny. I just had this conversation with someone the other day from my hometown in Chicago who does not understand the entertainment industry or how it works, right? And here's the analogy I gave them. I go, what if you were starting a restaurant, right? You'd be the restaurant owner, correct? And they're like, yeah. I go, and then you would hire a manager to manage the restaurant, right? They're like, yeah. I said, and then that manager's job would be to make sure that your restaurant is successful by hiring the right busboys, the waiters, making sure the plates are good, making sure the menu's good, right? It's all in collaboration with you as the owner, but it's their job to make sure that everything is running smoothly and in turn to be a profitable business, right? And what I was explaining to my friend is like, it's very similar, right? Like Wilmer Valderrama is the restaurant, right? And you, I'm sure, have a manager and you have an agent and you have a lawyer, and their number one goal is to make sure that Wilmer, the restaurant, the entity, is successful, right? And they all work together to make sure that that entity is successful. Would that be it? Would that be a pretty accurate
no, that's a great
analogy?
accurate presentation, because you do have to think of yourself, and I say this only metaphorically, but you got to think of yourself as like a product.
Yeah.
A product that's to be shared with audiences.
Yeah.
And what is this product's claim, right?
Yeah.
And how do you, in a weird, odd, silly way, how do you sell this product to the masses? And who does the selling, right? And who puts you in the game to prove that this product, in fact, could be something you can welcome to their homes, in their living rooms every evening, before or after dinner, right?
Indeed.
So that's part of it. But Aaron, your question of like, how do you put together a team, or like, what does it take to put a team together like this is very interesting, because at the beginning, it starts with the audacity of thinking, I can do this. Then you have to find individuals that support that delusion of feeling that like you can, and you have to find find people that believe it as hard as you, know, and that believe in you, right? Because one thing is having an agent that's just sending you on auditions, and there's another having an agent that before they send you an audition, they get on the phone with a casting director, a director, a producer, or a studio, and it says, you have to trust me.
Right.
I'm putting my reputation on the line. This is the person you're looking for. Like there is like representation, and there is like, a real disruptive belief, that this is gonna have to work, and it's that hustle, right? Like you gotta kind of find the hustler in the representation, but how you get there and all that that's a journey.
It is, right? You ever watch Shark Tank?
Yeah.
You ever seen, for example, like the guy who invented the Ring camera, right? You ever seen him on that show, or other products that had went on to become successful? It's funny because you watch that, and then you watch the people sitting on the couch on Shark Tank, and you're like, how could you not see that this is a $1 billion idea, right? Right. And I almost feel like your team are the people who are up on that stage saying, you have to buy Ring.
Right.
You don't see it right now, but you have to buy Ring. And the flip side to that is that you're constantly facing people like those sharks on the couch who are like, I don't see it.
Right.
I don't see it. How could you not see Ring? How could you not see the potential in a product like that? And it's their job to convince the people that they're missing out on $1 billion idea.
Right. Yeah. I think about the beginning of my career. I had a teacher. Her name was Celeste Boyd. I think I talked about her earlier in the.
Now, was this in high school, or was?
Well, I was in high school, and then I was taking her private class.
That's
outside.
Right. That's right.
I would go Wednesday nights to her house, and she was, bless her heart, she was such an angel. She was such a guardian angel to so many of her students. Every couple of weeks, she would bring her friends who were agents who were just looking for new talent, right? These young, cool, small agencies
to the class.
To her class, and do this little showcase,
Yeah.
And two things would happen. You get real feedback from agents about like, what you need to cultivate in order to get hired outside.
Yeah.
Like what you need to work on right now. So
Yeah.
then when you're out there, you get a better shot, right? So like they give you this feedback. And she saw me do a scene with my sister, and she was like, you're ready.
Oh, wow.
And she introduced me to this agent, and this agent said, hey, I'm not going to represent you yet, but I'm going to send you on a couple of auditions and see what kind of feedback we get. And they send me, I think, on like a couple of commercial auditions. I don't even know what they are. And I will get all this feedback. Right? They're like, wow, he's so good. He's so funny. But he has an accent. And if you're on television, you don't have accents. You speak perfect English somehow,
Right.
you know? So he would get this feedback, but he was like, you know, something about you, I'll keep sending you out. So he didn't really represent me, but he was kind of just trying to take me out and see what kind of feedback I got. I will say that made me go, how do I work so hard at the feedback? Like, how do I get so much amazing feedback that I can just get him to sign me?
Yeah.
So my hustle was like, I want to work as hard as possible to get him the best amount of feedback so he can hire me, because I wasn't booking the jobs. Like, I couldn't book the jobs, right? Like, people were like, yeah, he's got an accent or whatever, you know?
Because, right.
But, you know, 2.5 years, 3.5 years of like auditioning and stuff, you know, he sends me on this pilot, and then, you know, so he believed enough to put me in this really high profile pilot, which was That 70s Show.
What were you doing though? And because you were saying, I wanted to hustle so hard, I would be so good that I'd be undeniable in his eyes to continue to send me. So what were you doing that you were hustling so hard to show him?
Yeah. So if they would tell him, if the feedback was like, hey, he's so funny, then I wanted to be triple the funny the next time. Right?
Yeah.
Or if they were like, oh, he was adorable, then I try to be quadruple adorable. It's like, you know, a little dimple and, you know, smile.
The gleam.
Yeah. So like, I would just work on like beefing that up. And, you know, may or may not have worked, you know, but I definitely eventually he decided to represent me because I was getting so close. But
and feedback is so important, right? Because like they know you're not always going to book the gig,
right?
But as long as when they're out there getting feedback, the people are not saying, "Man, that dude sucked,"
right?
Or he's super unprepared. I think that's more detrimental as opposed to not booking the gig,
right?
Because they know it's a numbers game.
Yeah. What about you? What was that representation, finding that first agent?
You know, I feel that throughout my career, I've always had these like guardian angels. I've always had people who were mentors who saw something in me, and very much at times that I didn't see things in me. When I was in the 7th grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Levine who we did I think I mentioned this in the other episode, we did a talent show, and he randomly chose me to do a scene from a TV show and a talent show. I don't know why he chose me, but he saw something in me that I didn't see. When I was in the 8th grade, I got into my first theater company, and there was one of the drama teachers, her name was Caro Gutierrez, and she saw something in me that I didn't see. And it was because of her that I starred in the play in the theater company when I was 13, 14. It was because of her that I got a 2-year scholarship to the National College of Education. Right. It was because of her that she encouraged me to audition for the drama program at my high school. There was another mentor named Ray Moffitt who hired me in this independent theater company called Moi when I was like 15. Jeff Garland's ex-wife, Marla, who signed me as my first agent when I was like 15, 16 at Suzanne's A+ in Chicago. And then coming to LA, you know, my first manager, my first agent here, you know, there was always people who saw something in me. And it's funny because you were saying you were fighting against your accent. I was fighting against my accent too. I mean, till this day, people are like, nah, he sounds too urban. He sounds too Chicago. Quick sidebar. I had an audition one time for a role. It was supposed to be a Latino a priest out of Chicago, and so I went in there. I didn't lose my accent. I just sort of sounded like me, and the feedback was, he just sounds too urban. I'm like, wait a minute. Isn't the character Latino? They're like, yeah. I go, isn't he from Chicago? Yeah. I go, I'm Latino and I'm from Chicago. So I sounded like myself. So how can I sound too urban?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, if I had a dime for every time, they're like, it sounds too Latino.
Right? Yeah. He sounds too, like I do? Wow.
Okay.
But yeah, I constantly had mentors along the way that continued to believe in me and see something in me and was willing to put their reputation on the line for me. Quick shout out I have to give as we're on the subject. Mary Vernew,
Oh, Mary.
who is a casting director.
Wow, Mary.
So,
Mary.
I've said this before. One of my first movies was Dead Presidents, and I was an unknown out of Chicago. I was in LA shooting one movie, and I auditioned for it, and they wanted everybody who was super popular at the time. The studio did. And she went to bat for me, and she wrote a personal letter, and she said, "This is the guy you need to hire. Trust me when I tell you this."
Wow.
And it was because of
I'm
her
not surprised.
going to bat for me that not only did I get that movie, she's cast me in like 5 other movies.
Yeah.
I did Can't Hardly Wait because of her. I did this other movie called Inconvenienced. I did Harsh Times, Grindhouse. Those were all Mary Vernew movies. And
No, I mean, Mary is, and yes, major shout out to Mary.
Yeah,
Mary has been.
Mary Vernew.
She's
Betty May casting.
And but many actors can look at her as that guardian angel, somebody who really put them on.
Yeah, she's a champion.
And she actually is someone that I respect so much. She's mentored me so much about what they look for when they're casting. And you know what? Talk about a casting director and team, by the way, because the girls on The Office are also.
Oh yeah,
I mean, unbelievable. They will not let you leave until you have your best work on that tape.
Yeah,
dude, that's so rare. You know, that's so rare. And I mean, I've experienced so many casting directors in my career, at the beginning of my career, I should say, where they're just like. Cattle. Like no emotional investment in trying to find the person.
Yeah.
Because you're at the casting call. You're not even at the producer's call, at the director's call.
Yeah.
So in the casting call, they're just like filtering actors,
What's your worst audition experience?
Oh God. I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody, staring into a laptop while you're reading for them, or like there's nothing.
I've been there.
There's nothing worse than like, you're in the middle of an audition, somebody walks in with a message for the director or for the casting director, and they're just like pretend, and then just expect you to just keep going with the scene while they're just like whispering something. Their excuse is that they're filming it anyways, but they don't understand like the disturbance of. There's so many elements you're fighting against when you're in that room.
Yeah. Nerves.
All of that. Nerves, right? Nerves, preparation, right? You're making sure you don't forget what you have just relentlessly memorized, and listening. You're trying to listen without listening to what's not happening or what's happening on the side of the audition, right? Like you're reading with this person, but there's like rumbling here, there's like whispering here, there's like writing notes, sending back and forth. You're like, like you wonder, what are they writing on that note? What do they, it's like,
did they laugh? Did they not laugh?
Did not laugh at the right part? There's just so much stuff that you're trying to do such a good job. So I think those are probably the worst auditions. So you come in there and they're just filtering through, or they know you're not it. As soon as you walk in, and they just let you go through with it. You're like, it's like,
and you can feel it, right? You're like, this is not going well.
Totally. So that's why Mary's so different. That team is going to spend time with you, and if they brought you in, it's because they want you to get that part.
Yeah, the only one of the only movies I produced, I hired her. I produced a movie called Nothing Like the Holidays, and Mary cast
Oh, sure.
And I was like,
I dream of the day of being able to go to Mary and be like, would you please help me cast something? Because she's just a master.
Yeah,
she just has an eye for people that know how to entertain.
Yeah.
So for Mary, I'm assuming it was so important to put together the right casting assistant team, right?
Yeah.
That can really bring the best out of these actors, and and therefore the directors get the best, view at who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
Somebody might be right for it, but they just weren't set up for success in that room, and they're like it's tough, But they also tell you need to be, you need to rely only on yourself when you go into that room.
Yeah.
If the reader is horrible, which by the way, 80% of the readers are so bad.
Dude.
By the way, for the people at home, a reader is somebody who is at the opposite side of the camera, just literally reciting the lines of the other characters in the script while you're auditioning for your character. So they're the ones that are just like going through the other lines just so you can say your lines, you know?
I got to tell this bad audition story, if I may.
Please.
So this was like the mid to late 90s. And this was around a time that I felt that every time you saw Latinos on screen, they were sort of encompassing the stereotype, right? And stereotype is a whole other conversation that we could have and how I feel about it. But I had a couple of pretty prestigious movies out and I was doing pretty well. And there was a big movie that was being cast. And the role was a very stereotypical Latino gangster role. I'm sure you went up on every single Latino actor went up on it, right? And I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. I'm not auditioning for it, right? I was taking a stance. However, the casting director was a big casting director, okay? And has been around since like the 60s and cast Al Pacino and cast Dustin Hoffman and blah, 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 right? And so they were like, are you sure? Man, are you crazy? You better go in there and audition. I go, I'm not auditioning for her. I said, but I do want to meet her. I want to have a general meeting with her. I'm still new in town. And so my agents were like, okay, we'll set up a general meeting, right? So I go into the audition, and like I said, every actor that you know was in that audition. They were all in the waiting room. They all looked the same. They all had the same like freaking like plaid shirt on with the baggy pants. And here I come in, and I'm dressed regular, right? Everybody there is going over their lines and they're focused and they're in character and they have their sides in their hand. And here I have no sides and I'm just kind of like chilling there, smiling, you know. And so speaking of the casting assistant, I see the casting assistant come out and he kind of, you know, crosses someone's name out. He calls an actor in there and he kind of looks at me, right? Goes in, brings the actor in, comes back out, crosses another name, gets another actor, and then looks at me again, right? Every single time he comes out, he has the look of concern in his face increases. So finally, he comes to me and he goes, all right, Freddy, it's your turn, right? And I'm walking into this audition. And at a certain point, I can see the wheels just turning in his head. And he finally turns around and he goes, hey, are you all right? Do you need any sides? You know? And I'm like, sides? No, I'm just here for a general meeting. And his face dropped. He was like, a general meeting? And I was like, yeah. He goes, wait right here. So he goes in to this casting door. He slams the door. I could hear him talking and I can hear her erupt on the other side. What? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, damn, this is not going to be good, right? Finally.
Wait, why was she yelling that? She didn't know about
Yeah, I guess the agents didn't tell her that it was a general meeting.
They probably just told the assistant didn't communicate and they just brought you in?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So then they opened the door and you could see it in his eyes that he just got reamed out. And he's like, come in. He's so pissed off, right? And she's like, sit down. And I sit down and I'm like, hi. And she's like, so I hear you're not going to audition for this. Why? And I was very honest in my response. And I just said, look, I'm here. I have a couple of movies out in the theater right now. I think I'm going on a very different trajectory. And I told her honestly about how I felt about how Latinos were being portrayed in film. And I stood my ground.
Good for you.
And she heard me. And then she was like, all right. And then she just sort of dismissed me, right?
So that was like was it a short meeting? Was it a long meeting?
It was.
You guys talk about Chicago a little bit?
No, absolutely not. She just wanted to hear what I had to say, right? And she sent me on my way.
Okay.
And I left, and I was like, I'm never going to hear from her again. Cut to a couple of years later, I get an audition for a movie called Payback, and it was Brian Hegelin was directing it. He had just written Mystic River, I think. I think he just won the Oscar for Mystic River, and this was his first movie. It was a big Warner Brothers movie. Mel Gibson was attached, Chris Christopherson, Lucy Liu. It was a huge cast, right? And I look on the sheet, and I was like, yo, she's bringing me back in after that encounter that I had. And she brought me back in.
Was she in the room when you walked in?
I walked in, and it was the complete opposite. It was one of the most pleasant experiences I've ever had. She sat me down and she was so nice to me and she wanted to know everything about me. And she went on to tell me that she cast Al Pacino in this movie and Dustin Hoffman in that movie because I told her that those are my influences. And we went on and we auditioned and I got the part.
Wow. I mean, what a 180, right? Like that's intense. And do you think in however many years, how many years do you think happened?
In between?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe like 2, maybe. I mean, yeah.
This is what I think happened.
You think I think she forgot.
This is what I think happened. This is like Freddy who? I've never met Freddy Rodriguez. Bring him in.
Bring him in. Hey.
No, but this is what I think happened.
Yeah.
I think that in the time that you had left her office, you made such an impression.
Right.
Of somebody that knew who he was, that she had to do a little homework.
Okay. Right.
If you're a great casting director, which she is, right? She's going to be intrigued enough to say, somebody who has a direct response to what they're not is someone I need to know. So I think she's been kind of tracking. She did homework. She saw a couple of your movies. You know, you had a couple things out at the time, and she's like, who the fuck is this guy?
Right. Have the audacity
Who
to come
is
in
this
here.
dude? And I think that she's been waiting this whole time for something that was right for you. And, you know, to our luck, there's not a lot of stuff that we were right for in that era, right? Like, there's just not a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that's what happened.
Maybe.
I think she kind of like went back, and then at this point you're coming back with like major credentials, and you're like, I need him in my movie.
Right.
I think that's what happens, you know.
Yeah.
I before we move on to you know how you put teams together, and you as a producer, you ever had to no, but I want to kind of piggyback on what you're saying. There's so many instances where, you know, where you kind of have to put yourself to the town over and over again.
Yeah.
And when I had finished a 70s show, well, actually 2.5 years before I finished 70s show, I had to go around town and beg, and my agents had to beg for me to have these general meetings. And what a general meeting is you know, you're meeting an actor for the first time, just so for awareness that this person exists. So if there ever was a role or something that you were right for, you were top of mind, or you were in a short list.
Yeah.
And you connected with individuals, so they see that not only you were serious, but you were somebody to be trusted. And so for 2.5 years, being on the show, like they had to say, hey, you know, Wilmer is more than just Fez, right? And that was the struggle. To be able to like go to all, and you know, I this is like coming full circle. We talk about teams and you know, I think
how many years into the show was this?
I think 6 years.
Oh wow!
I was 2.5 years before it was done, before the show was done.
And you felt that you were going in, and they were.
Yeah, I mean, they were just like they were surprised, right? Like, but you know, this is big shout out to Shani Rosenzweig over at UTA. She's been my agent since I was like 19 years old.
Right.
And she fought with the town for them to see me as who I was and for what I could be, as opposed to like what they could see.
Yeah. Especially when
trajectory.
when you create such an iconic character like that, right? Those are the pros and cons. The pros of creating an iconic character is you created an iconic character.
Yeah.
The con is that people only see you as that, right?
Right. And so so she was just setting me up with the head of casting of every studio, the head of casting of a production company, the head of casting of every network, you know, producers, writers, showrunners. Like I was meeting whoever wanted to have me.
Yeah.
And when I would walk in, I looked very different. I sound very different, you know, so people were like, whoa.
Right.
I had no idea that you didn't sound like that or didn't do your hair like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a very funny thing that, you know, we kind of have to educate anyone just so I can have a shot at auditioning for the stuff that I wanted to do.
Right.
You know, just for the audition, just so they can bring me in, because it was hard for them to imagine if I could do someone else.
And I think also because you created that character, I mean, that was the first thing out the gate, right? So it wasn't like wasn't like you had other stuff to point to, and then you created that character, and then people, like Forrest Gump or something, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's Tom Hanks doing
No.
Forrest Gump. It was like,
Yeah, when
who is this guy?
Yeah, I shook
He's funny as
America's
hell.
and the world's hand
Yeah.
wearing bell bottoms. That's how I said hello to people.
And would you say the paunch?
Yeah, the punch, the Eric
punch
Estrada, the Eric Estrada feather hair. You
Yeah.
know, that was me. But
Yeah.
you're a producer, and
Yeah.
and you've directed before, right?
I have, yeah, not on a major level, but yeah, I have.
But you're a director.
Yeah.
And I I'm very curious about what do you look for in your team? When we talk about leadership.
Yeah.
And then follow up that question is, is how do you what do you consider your traits as a leader? And as you have defined it over time. So what do you look for in a team?
Yeah.
When you're putting together who you're gonna go to war with, and how do you define yourself as a leader?
Yeah. I'm going to give you 2 examples before I answer that question, okay? I've been on some of the most successful TV shows and movies of all time, and I've been in some pretty crap TV shows and movies as well. And what I've learned from those both experiences is that it all starts at the top, okay? And the tone that you set on top trickles down to everyone else below, okay? And I saw how that worked. I saw how that formation contributed to the success of a show, of a movie, and I saw how it didn't work. And I saw how the person on top did not possess any sort of leadership skills, brought bad habits, came with attitudes that were probably not acceptable. Everything else under that umbrella. And how them being that way contributed to the show or the movie taking a nosedive. And so
you feel all those things, all those energies were infused into the DNA of the product itself.
Yes, because no matter who is below you, if you're the leader, everyone's looking up to you, right? No matter what integrity those people bring to the table, no matter how high their skill level is, they're all looking up to you, right? And if you're a prick, if you're whatever, if you're coming to work with bad habits, then they're taking a page out of your book. I'm sure there's been other instances where that hasn't been the case, but that's been my experiences.
Right.
And so learning that early on, I've learned that if I'm going to be a leader, it's important how I lead, how I conduct myself, what kind of habits I possess, what kind of energy. I'm a strong believer in energy and synergy, in vibe, in integrity,
Right.
in honesty. Like I may sound corny, that may sound nerdy, but I'm a strong believer in that stuff. You know, in an industry where sometimes people don't value those things.
Right.
Let me tell you something, man. Some of the biggest people that I've worked with from a producerial level have all been really honest and very straight up and very straightforward. No matter what the ramifications of that is going to be, and they'd rather be that way and be straight up and accept whatever comes from that than to be dishonest and to be deceitful and deceptive and to have that blow up in their face and affect their reputation. And so I'm a believer in that. Listen, other producers, conduct themselves differently, but I believe in that tactic.
I think you're right, and I've seen it in you. I've seen it how you went. When you entered the room, the energy that you said. You're collective. You're listen. You're transparent. All those things are important for whoever you work with in your team.
Yep.
To feel like they have also the environment to be the same.
Right.
Well, thank you everyone for listening or watching the first half of this leadership conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy part 2. This is Los Amigos. I'm Wilmer Valderrama.
I'm Freddy Rodriguez. See you on the next one.